internet, you're obviously not fully experiencing my profound bitching. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I'm Shahir Dowd. Welcome to The Suck.
Oh boy, and this is the only podcast about movies, fan request episode, specifically the film Boyhood.
By Richard Linklaters. This was requested many a month ago by Kartik Singh, our friend in Paris, who is a longtime listener, first-time writer. No, he's written it a few times. But
we realized
we've been wanting to do this one for a while. It's just taken us a little while. We've wanted to have a guest on, and whoa, hold on. Is there a guest in the room right now?
this joke never gets old, like we didn't notice he was here, but he's been here the whole time. Ladies and gentlemen, good friend from our television production world, Mr. Dan Kuvalakis is in the building.
Hey, everyone.
How are you, buddy?
I'm so honored to be on the only podcast about movies.
I know.
It's weird, right?
Isn't
It's
it weird?
amazing.
You'd think there'd be more.
I don't know how I got chosen for this.
Because two reasons. One,
We actually picked you when you were 12 years old, and we've been following you.
We've been
tracking my
following
progress.
you to now, once you've seen this film, and you and I have talked about this film just in passing in the past.
We have, yep.
And we have differing opinions.
We do.
But I respect your opinions on film, and I wanted to make sure that when we did this episode, everyone knows I don't like this movie. Shahir is a little bit back and forth, I think, about it. And
We'll talk about it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want this to be a kick circle on this fucking thing because I understand how work works. Like I don't, there's validity in everything, and I wanted someone who was passionate about it. And you and I have discussed it, and I thought this would be a nice open forum for us to just tear each other's hearts out.
Yeah.
We've also. Oh, sorry.
No,
go ahead,
please.
Dan.
Go, no.
Oh, I was just going to say we've also referenced this movie quite a lot in our Moonlight review.
Yes.
As a counterpoint to this movie.
Got it.
So if you're interested in our opinion on this movie and then maybe our opinion on Moonlight, go check out that episode. And if you're interested in requesting a film like Kartik did, you can reach us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod, or also check out our website at onlymoviepodcast.com.
Yes. Also, if you want, do some iTunes reviews.
We do like those iTunes reviews. They're very helpful to spread the word. We're getting a lot of listeners in Australia for some reason.
You had mentioned that last time.
Yeah, and I would love to do some Australian. There's a very difficult to find Australian film, which is one of my favorites, called The Boys, which
goes with the theme.
Actually, yeah. If we
The
were
Boys
doing-
Hood. Boys
Actually,
in the Hood.
If I'm not doing the Criterion Corner anymore, but I'm gonna do it at the beginning of the episode for a film that's impossible to find on DVD, but it's called The Boys and it's an Australian movie, and I can't remember the director's
This
name.
is not an actionable review.
This is
at all.
an actionable review.
because literally you're setting up an Easter egg hunt that you're telling people they'll never be able to find.
But have fun, my children.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, we're all Shahir's children now.
Now, I'm curious, why was this movie requested? Is this something that the fans that requested liked?
No. Here's so this is a movie that's been entered into the National Board of Reviews. It's been nominated for Oscars. It has been touted as one of the greats. I think even last year, in the list of greatest American movies in the last 50 or 20 years, this ranked very highly. It might have been a number 3 or 4.
It was up there.
It's on Metacritic. It has like one of the highest of all time, right? Like the purest reviews.
And so I believe Kartik reviewed it, and I know Kartik. He lives in Paris. He's a filmmaker, and he, I think, like me, is not a huge fan of this movie, and so he wanted to hear an opinion about why people might love this movie. So Matt, can you tell us what Boyhood is about?
I sure can. Let me just. Sorry, I was looking it up on Rotten Tomatoes. It has a 98.
90.
So I am in the minority.
You are the 2%.
Yeah.
I am the
I'm
2%.
finally the 1%.
So though I'm in the minority here, I feel like I have the strength of Rotten Tomatoes, the critics, and most of the country.
No,
on my
you
side.
are in. You are you've won the popular vote.
But does that mean? Oh no!
The electoral college.
Don't do that to me. So am I representing those with like? Would you guys say it's like those with like lesser taste?
No,
Just like a
no,
taste-
no,
not a
not at
taste
all.
of you.
No.
Okay.
I will never fault someone for liking a film. I feel like if you like a film,
Constantly fault me for liking movies.
I mean, I've heard
I will
it.
never fault anyone but Shahir for liking a film.
That's fair.
Shahir and I have a weird little contract going where we can fault each other's character and likes and just personal and souls.
And appearance.
And sexual prowess and a bunch of other things.
Of which
Stop there.
neither of
Let's
us
stop
have
there.
any.
But I want people to like movies. There's no question.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing to say after I'm going to try to convince people to not like this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess when I'm bitching about it, it is just me bitching. It's not like I'm not trying to convert people,
Sure, of
I
course,
guess.
of course.
This is how I feel about it. So obviously I am in the minority when this happens, and that's that.
Yeah.
So tell us what's it about.
Okay. The one sentence IMDb, I love it so much. Description: the life of Mason from early childhood to his arrival at college.
That's it. That's what you're getting. 3 hours.
3 hours.
I mean, even as somebody who liked the film, I could have summed this up in about
yeah.
5 words or less.
Right. It's
Boy grows up.
And again, IMDb does have a longer thing. I just, I like those. Yeah. So Boyhood. I'll just start, I guess. I saw it. I saw it at the BAM back when it came
So did
out.
I.
Yeah. And I walked out of it, and I because it's long. It's like 3 hours and some change.
Just under, yeah.
It was hard for me to get through. And for reasons I'll sort of go into later on. And it might just be because when I went into it, it's so interesting that now Moonlight is out. Like, when I heard this movie was happening, I was like, this is an amazing gimmick. I'm like, this is so fucking cool that someone did this.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just, for me, when I walked out, I was like, the movie was all gimmick. I've even said it's the greatest gimmick film ever made. And obviously I'm saying the word gimmick as a negative point.
It's definitely no, but it's a gimmick.
But then Moonlight came out, which deals with obviously much different characters, but still the growing up and becoming an adult in different places in the world and whatnot. But it deals with it in such a true emotional sort of like just powerful way, where this I felt like constantly relied on the fact that it was, hey, are you noticing they're getting older? Are you? They're a little older now. Now he's got long hair. Now he's got short hair. Oh, he's a little older. He's got some. Okay, he's there. So like that to me really it undercut the film for me, and nothing the movie did was strong enough to ever bring me back. And now upon rewatching, I'll get into it later, I have even more issue with it, in particular with its length and its reliance on this passage of time gimmicky thing.
Right.
Do you want to go? Do you want to let Dan close us up here in the opening, Shahir?
Well, I think I'm in the middle of both of your
All right.
opinions, so I'm gonna. Dan, why don't you give us the Polar Polar Express here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Polar Express.
Going into it, I had very low expectations, right? So I knew just the gimmick, and I kind of just let it wash over me.
Are you a fan of Richard Linklater?
So I'm not going to say yes, only because I feel like I've seen so few of his films. I've never seen the Before Sunrise, Sunset movies. I've always planned to.
You love those shit.
I've never seen them. I'm not a huge fan of Dazed and Confused.
Nope.
I think
I'm not a huge fan of it either.
because I didn't see it. Maybe I didn't see it at the right time. It's one of those movies I think that you see it at the right time. It hits you. I have friends who worship that film, and I just don't. It's fine, What else has he done? What else?
I mean, Waking Life series.
I've never seen Scanner Darkly. I've never seen the. Yeah,
You've never seen those.
Scanner Darkly wasn't bad.
The recent film Bernie, which was about the the person who killed someone in Texas, but was so beloved by the community.
Is that Jack Black or something?
Yeah, Jack Black.
Nope, didn't see that.
Newton Boys.
Yeah, I really educated myself before I
Fast
came
Food
here.
Nation.
Yeah.
He's
I don't even bother trying to. He just knows everything.
He just knows. He's not even looking at a list. He just knows.
The thing about Richard Linklater is he's done so many films.
Sure.
I mean, Slacker. Have you Slacker?
Never saw Slacker.
Everybody wants some
You
this
can
year.
kick me out now if you want. This is fine.
No, it's cool. It's
Yeah.
cool.
We're not talking about Slacker.
That's right.
But
I think that I did let it just kind of wash over me. I enjoyed the moments. I think on second review, I guess we can talk about that later. But I felt like I was this kid at times.
Right.
I felt like I knew this kid. I felt like I knew every character in the film, and I'm not going to say I wanted to sit there for longer than 2 hours and 45 minutes or
Please
3
don't.
hours, but I did enjoy being with those characters through that time. And I felt like I traveled with them along those journeys. And I feel like, seeing patterns repeat and seeing, the sister, especially, like I knew that girl. And I like the way that they
Sister's the
focused
best part of the
on-
movie.
Sister was great. And I thought that, in the beginning, I was like, is this girl, she got the part. Obviously, she's like
That's his daughter. Yeah.
I thought, is she just kind of phoning it in because she's there, she was there and available every year for 12 years. But I do think that having the boy be your central character and trying to invest in him, having her be a little bit of a mystery, like you didn't really get into her head.
No.
So getting, I don't know, I felt like going along this journey, I was with them and I wanted to be with them. So I think I wanted to enjoy the film. I wanted to.
it sounds like you did
succeed,
enjoy it.
and I
Yeah.
did. I did. On second viewing, I had a little bit more.
Oh, wow.
I had some more issues with it.
Okay.
A lot of it, I think we'll get to this, but some of the dialogue was a little hit you over the head, dialogue.
Holy shit.
Some of the lines on second review were ridiculous, but I still landed at the same place with those characters, and I was kind of happy I was with them,
Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, my thing with Richard Linklater is every filmmaker looks to Slacker at some point as, a turning point in indie cinema. It was this idea that you could make these sort of little vignette stories into a singular film. It changed the way we understand film distribution. So Richard Linklater has been part of that. I've never loved any of his movies. My favorite Richard Linklater film was a film called Tape, which was a film with him, Ethan Hawke, and the guy from Dead Poets Society, whose name I've gone blank on, but in a hotel room. Amazing film. So when I saw Boyhood, I've kind of I went back and I was like, oh, I've actually seen a lot of Richard Linklater's films, but just never really thought about them because I've never thought about him as a singular auteur. But the one thing that has defined his career is the Before trilogy, the Before Sunset, Before Sunrise, Before Midnight, which I binged through them recently in anticipation of this film. Because when I watched Boyhood for the first time, I was like, I kind of felt underwhelmed by the whole thing. And I felt that for a film that was so ambitious in its actual construction, it was so underwhelming and unambitious as a narrative. And maybe that's the point, if you're trying to make a film over 12 years with a single character, you're just trying to explore who this kid is. And so the film is just an exploration of who this kid is.
It's a time capsule, right?
Yeah, a time capsule film. But I found it underwhelming. And not only did I find it underwhelming, I actually found it pretty clunky in places. I found it pretty and rewatching it now, I was like, wow, a lot of these scenes have no subtext. A lot of these scenes are just what's happening right now.
And a lot of the scenes, weirdly enough, start or stop, whether they're important scenes or not, just with cultural references to get you on board again with the gimmick of now it's 1999 or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah, you get your music references, you get your technology references throughout.
They're not, most of them are not smoothly integrated. It's and now we're going to show you Dragon Ball Z for 5 seconds, and you're like, okay.
I think watching it this time around, I think it's unfair to call it a gimmick. It's not a gimmick.
Oh, it is a gimmick.
It is not a gimmick.
Holy shit, is it a gimmick?
It's not a gimmick. This is a sincere exploration of the idea of following an actor from the age of 7 through the age of 18.
Would this story have been told if not? Would the story of Mason been told if this wasn't the way it was told?
But you're thinking about it the wrong way, which is that they didn't know where this film was going when they made it. Right. So they were basically coming to it and trying to construct a story every year. And that's not a gimmick. That is an exploration. They could, in fact, at some point, they could have just said, well, look, this is just not working out. Let's not do this. But
was the major selling point of this film that it was shot over 12 years?
The major selling point of when they released the film is that it was shot over 12 years. But I don't think they were like, let's tell this story over 12 years.
Do you think it would be touted as great as it was if it was not shot over the course of 12 years?
Here's the thing. That's the way to that's the reason I actually didn't like it the first time around, was that I still don't like it as a film. I actually
you just don't like the word gimmick.
I just don't like the word gimmick, and I think gimmick is unfair to the sincerity and the way in which the gimmick to me is someone trying to exploit the audience for a financial purpose. This is not that. This is.
I'm going beyond financial. There's financial there, but it's also just engagement purpose.
No. But I don't think that's a gimmick. What I think is the case here is that this artist is sincerely exploring this idea of, can I tell a story over 12 years? And
the answer is no.
No, I think it can be done.
No, it can be done. It's just not done well.
And where it's done masterfully is the Before trilogy. I binge those and they are incredible. Every scene of the Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight trilogy is amazing.
And I can't speak to those because I haven't seen them. I want to.
Right. They're incredible, and to me, they're more powerful than this. And remember, if you're arguing about gimmick, the gimmick there is the same thing.
But this is the thing.
Except it's 3 movies instead of 1.
Dan, have you seen any of the? You said you hadn't seen these 3.
No.
Yeah.
And I haven't either. And I can't speak to them. I know you've seen them, and I respect you mostly.
To some part.
Half of the time, I really do.
Doesn't always sound like
I do. But the thing there, it sounds like that maybe there is a gimmick there, but the gimmick is not what gives the movie relevance.
Well, people
This
talk
movie
about-
would not be relevant if it wasn't shot over 12 years. The story of Mason growing up is not as interesting as Moonlight or as another film that sort of, it's just not.
So I don't think you could have told his story without the gimmick. We're going to call it the gimmick, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't have told a story of somebody at various points through 12 years because you'd switch out the actors. You
But
couldn't.
we've proven that can be done.
Yes, sure. In other films, I haven't seen Moonlight again.
Yeah.
Coming to the table unarmed. But
And
I
it's
think
on,
that.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. I think that was. I guess you asked the question like, what came first, the gimmick or the story? And in this case, I think that the concept, if we don't want to call it a gimmick, the concept of checking in every year for 12 years came first.
Yes.
And they developed the film over time. Now, one of the things that I liked about the film is that they incorporated what was going on in his life along the way.
Yeah, he became a photographer at some point.
They incorporated his piercing, his hair, his taste in music, his the technology of the time. So when I see things like texting on a phone, having a sound dock with your iPhone in it or something, those to me are not necessarily they are mile markers for the time that we're in. But I also think what were you obsessed with when you were 14? You were playing Halo, you were watching Dragon Ball Z, like those things to me were. You are, again, it's a time capsule of where this kid was along the way. So if you're looking at it like, I want more of a story, if I want more of a, and I guess that's what I guess we'll get to that. But like
the word I would use instead of gimmick is I think it was the experiment.
The experiment, for sure.
Yeah. What it was the experiment of can we make a movie over 12 years? And I think that's what they were going
It's
for.
an experiment until it's sold. I mean, that's what I like. I get that.
But and for a lot of people, this is successful. Now, again, for me personally, and what I've been trying to think about for the since Kartik asked us to review the film,
Sure.
and since I watched it last time, I was like, why don't I like this film that much? And I've been thinking a lot about that, and in the rewatch as well. And the one thing that I was thinking about is the title itself, Boyhood. And it reminded me of a Madonna song that came out years ago.
I love this already.
Which is like, do you know? The lyrics goes like, do you know what it feels like to be a girl or to be a woman?
Right.
And the thing about that always irked me about that lyric and that notion of Madonna singing that song is that she doesn't know what it's like to be another kind of woman. And like it's what's missing there is this idea of specificity. And the problem with Boyhood for me is that it is attempting for universality. It's attempting to be a story of boyhood. And my issue is that it is so broad and so vague, and none of the scenes are specific, even to the construction of them, that every scene feels like a construction. Like the alcoholic father doesn't read to me like a genuine scene, a genuine story about an alcoholic father. It feels like an episode that was put into the story, and it doesn't feel real to me. There are other scenes like the dark room conversation that happens later on in the movie.
That was a tough one.
The Mexican worker
the worst part of the fucking movie.
All of those things feel unspecific.
Pedantic is the word you're looking for.
Well, just unspecific. And that's why the film doesn't work for me. I admire the patience and tenacity and the idea of doing this experiment. I just don't think it's a successful experiment for me. Apparently, for a lot of people, it is.
Do you think what would have made this concept work better for you?
I think if the so what's great about the Before trilogy is that every time we check in with that couple, there are unique events that are specific to only that couple that feel genuine, that feel lived in, that feel revelatory every time I see them.
Mm-hmm.
There's very little about what happens in Boyhood that feels revelatory to me. There's very little of it that feels like I'm witnessing something profound happening. What instead I feel like I'm watching is the notion of something profound happening. Like we are expecting something profound to happen. There's a lot to like about this movie,
Sure.
and there's a lot to admire about this movie. But I personally don't feel like it actually connects.
And I think from a technical aspect, that's very true. I think the fact that this was actually finished is a marvel. There's no question in my mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think what would have made this work better for me, back to your question, Dan, is characters that were kind of like what Shahir just said, that were not just sort of like empty templates. I mean, literally, the characters of Mom and Dad are named Mom and Dad. Like they don't have names.
Because you're getting this story from his
Of
point
course,
view, right?
of course, but that doesn't mean that they can't be characters. Like it feels like this movie is obsessed with two things. One, letting you know that time is passing and they're doing this in real time. Two, it is obsessed with sort of almost like this weird level of like pseudo nostalgia, and not to the point of like, oh my God, wasn't Halo great? Wasn't Britney Spears great? It's like, oh, remember when you were a kid and you did this? Oh man, that happened.
But
remember?
No, hang on, hold on.
I think that
I'm gonna
yeah.
no, Dan, go
No,
ahead.
please.
But no, sorry, I didn't even answer your question. So just to wrap it up, if they had more characters, for instance, I feel like the daughter. I feel like the daughter was a fully fleshed out character. Really the only one. And if the writing in this, if it is actually written, was it written or was it
written.
improv?
It was written.
Okay, because that's awful. Like the writing in this is gross. Like it feels so like, oh fuck, we have to connect these two things. Well, this one sentence kind of does it, and then it pushes it forward. So the two things: characters and way better writing. Like
Did you want more focus on other characters?
I wanted them to seem like characters and not caricatures that remind me of, oh, that's what it's like with your mom when you're 16. Like I get that. I had that. I know it. Like tell me something now.
So
Dan, I feel so bad for you
Dan,
right now.
I love you, buddy, and you are a saint for being here and listening to me, bitch.
So again, all right. So everything's through the lens of this boy. So when you say, the title, first of all, the title wasn't always the things you read online before you review a movie. It wasn't always. It was called Boyhood in production, but he wanted to call it 12 Years, and it ended up being the same year or around the time of 12 Years a Slave. So
Right,
he had to
that
change
makes
to Boyhood,
sense.
right?
That makes sense.
So everything's through his lens, I guess, figuratively
Mason's
and
lens.
literally, with
Mason,
the photographer.
Yeah, played by what the hell was that?
L.R.
kid's name?
Coltrane.
Yeah.
So getting these surface viewings of these events, the alcoholic father, the alcoholic stepdad, two alcoholic stepdads.
Yeah, I was going to
for
say,
that
there's a
matter.
cycle.
I didn't mind not delving deeper into those other characters because I was getting it from his point of view. Like to me, Mason was this kid that like lives on the periphery of everything, right?
Sure.
And that I'm not saying that I fully relate to that, but I think we all relate to that somewhat. And seeing his interactions with these characters, mom and dad, like when you're a kid, especially, I think this is why the first half of the film to me is more successful than the second half.
I'll say, yeah.
Getting these snippets of what a 7-year-old, a 9-year-old, an 11-year-old sees and like how he processes that and how it informs the kid that he becomes at 17, 18. I think that was successful for me because I understood his evolution of a character from beginning to end.
Yeah.
I saw how, dealing with that leaving those kids behind, leaving the kid on the bike from when they first move in the first year, leaving the two step siblings behind when they had to leave in the middle of the, in the middle of the day. Those things to me all formed this kid who had these detachments at the end, who observed everything and didn't participate. So for me, that sort of character study was sufficient enough, and I kind of only really like the movie for that. Like I think there were a lot of moments where it's like, oh, is this going to be a bigger storyline? Is this loaded gun that we're seeing? Is this throwing star or whatever it was in that one scene? Like, are these like,
I think it was a saw blade.
It was a saw blade, right?
Yeah.
Because I used to do that shit
when they're like
houses.
when they're like texting and driving and he's looking at the picture of the pig on the phone, like all these moments you're like, am I expecting something terrible to happen? But I was like, this isn't a normal movie. Like this isn't, the loaded gun doesn't have to be shot at some point. Like this is just a glimpse through this person's life. So seeing that and kind of like accepting that, and I think I accepted that early on, and why it helped me was why I think I let this movie be just what it is.
So as we go on, as we go through the sort of chronology of the film, once we get into spoilers, even though that's not even really a thing in this part,
he grows up.
Call out, call those out to me. The moments where you feel like this is a defining moment that affects Mason later, because I don't see any of them, and
I agree with Dan.
That's what I'm saying. I want to see these. So when we get to those points, both of you, please call them out to me because I did not experience that, and I want to. I would love to love this movie because I've now spent 6 hours of my life with it, and I'd really like to not hate those 6 hours.
Right? No, I agree with Dan. I think there are moments that are really forming, and I think the thing that's also interesting is this idea of like following this kid 12, like over 12 years, and the kind of the Heisenberg effect of actually like putting a camera on this kid for a while and then seeing does the fact that he's been making a movie for the last 12 years change?
We can't separate that, unfortunately. Yeah.
Change who he actually becomes.
Right.
And I think that's really interesting. And then watching it again, because I've made a film with kids, and it is very difficult, and they change so much. And the movie I made had a range of kids from I think 11 through to 17.
God bless you.
And it's just, like, so the thing with the 11-year-olds are amazing because they want to talk, they want to act, they're having fun. The 14-year-olds are like quiet and reserved.
And that's exactly what you get in this movie.
Yeah,
the kid goes through all of the general stuff of a kid. Like, you can tell that.
And it's so, I am in complete admiration of the process, the procedure.
Sure.
I just, and I think like for me, one of the pivotal scenes that I think is really great is him getting his head shaved.
Oh my God.
Because
that was one of the only moments where I felt a thing in this movie.
And what I loved about it is that later on when he grows his hair long, it kind of, the correlation between those two events really makes sense to me. But again, I still think that whenever the film tries to get into storytelling or tries to get into construction scene, it's not that they're I think that they're making the wrong move. I think they're executing it badly.
Okay.
And that to me is like the ultimate failure of the film. And this is from a guy who, having just watched the Before trilogy, was like, he can execute brilliantly. This is a guy who knows how to write scenes, who knows how to like make actors work.
So does the weight of the gimmick or experiment, depending on what side of the table you're doing, does that weigh too heavy on him to be able to use all those tools in his toolbox to make a successful film?
But think about this. Just think about this. You've picked a kid at the age of 8 or 7
you don't know.
that you're going to make your lead actor for the rest of his, like, for the remainder, the next 12 years. So the idea is like, okay, in year 7, can I, what kind of person is Mason now? Can I actually get him to do a scene?
And that's all fine and good, but you can change your fucking writing for everything else. Like, there's other ways other than Mason, even though he's the focus. There's a bunch of different ways, which we've already sort of talked about, how we could make this movie better. I think the weight of the gimmick experimental gimmick.
I think experiment is better.
I want to use both now. You've got me to use both. I was just using gimmick, and now I'm hyphenating them. I just think the weight of that weighed down the ability, apparently, to make it a more sort of visceral or clear experience like those other 3 films, like his previous works.
Yeah, I mean, like a film that came out around the same time as Tree of Life, like a little bit earlier.
I had a weird relationship with that movie.
But like scenes of childhood in A Tree of Life ring far truer, far more viscerally, I'm far more connected to them, even though I'm not a kid from Texas. Even
though you've never been a dinosaur?
I've never been a dinosaur. I've never stood on my
There's
dinosaur.
dinosaurs in it, Dan.
Spoiler.
Spoiler alert.
That stuff connects with me much more viscerally than anything in Boyhood does. And we've already talked about Moonlight. It's not the first time that also an actor has traveled through, like the Anton Doinel series with Francois Truffaut. The Apu trilogy has also, but it's not the same actor. But like we've seen this done before. My problem is that he's aiming for something so broad and universal that like scenes of the alcoholic father at the dinner table feel like
a play.
Feel like a PSA in some way, like they don't feel, it feels like, oh, we're doing the alcoholic dad scene.
Sure.
Yeah. It's not like we're doing a scene in Mason's life that has a profound impact on him. Even though it is that too, I just don't feel it reads like that first. It reads more like the alcoholic dad scene.
Sure. That's fair. I would liken maybe this movie more to, I've never seen them, the 7-Up series. You guys familiar with the 7-Up series?
7-Up, 49, Michael Apted series.
So I have always wanted to see those films, and I never have, but I come kind of more from a doc background, and those appeal to me, and I do one day want to kind of sit down and watch them through. This to me skews more towards that than film, more towards a doc than film.
I've seen 1 or 2 of the 7-Up series. I think I've seen 14 and I've seen 49. So I've like really jumped in.
Wow.
Very out of order.
But you just lost all on the story.
They're remarkable. They're incredible. But the thing about those is, again, because they're a doc and
you're not expecting better.
No,
you get what you get.
No, the thing is that they're so specific and so like unique, and you really feel that those are real characters who are like like you're getting to know a real human being. What I feel like I'm getting in Boyhood is kind of a cipher of a human being.
Sure.
Like it doesn't. I don't actually connect, and it's weird to me that Lorelei Samantha, the sister played by Linklater's daughter, feels more interesting to me and more compelling, even though she has least to do in the movie.
She's a cipher. I mean, to me, if I look at her as like she was a complete mystery to me. I mean,
right.
But I thought that was to the film's credit.
Right.
Anyway.
But for some reason, the way she was developed made her the most interesting part. Like, I was never involved with, like, because mom and dad served two different purposes, right? Mom was the one sort of keeping the family together and being like she had her differences and her traps that she fell into. But and then dad would come and be cool, not quite responsible till later on in the years, but he'd always leave like 2 or 3 drops of wisdom where you're like, oh yeah, fucking dad's real smart. So like, but that's the sister just felt like, God, more of an actual character than Mason did, and maybe that's because they could control it more.
I actually really
agree. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Dan.
No, I don't know that if you have issues with him, I'm not. I guess I'm not clear how you have more, like you could grasp her character more.
I believed her more, and maybe it comes down to raw acting.
That's a question.
I think it also is that there's not as much inference placed on what her character does. She's kind of in the background, so we inject more of our own thought process into her.
Possibly. You're getting more of him, and you guys don't like what you're getting out of him.
What I get out of him is constructed. I was going to say, I every time Ethan Hawke was on screen,
he was great.
I actually found him a breath of fresh air, and I actually really liked the transformation that his character went through. Like from being this kind of like rock star, I'm going to go to Alaska and write some music, to like, oh, I'm taking my actuary exams, to I'm now a real, like an insurance agent, to I'm now like, I have a family,
married to a religious family,
driving a minivan. Like I actually found that, and I found every conversation that he had, and he has this.
Is that just because we're getting old, Shahir?
No, but I think it's also because the improvisation that
manhood
that Ethan Hawke does, because they do it in the Before series as well. Like the Ethan Hawke actually writes with Richard Linklater in those films. Is I think a little bit more authentic, a little bit more specific. He injects, I'm just going to use a casual term. It feels real.
Realer,
like he brings the real to it.
Yeah, even though the other kid is more real.
I mean, there's a scene late in the film between Patricia Arquette and Ethan Hawke that you're like, oh, these are two great actors having a scene together, unencumbered by the children that they've been acting with for all these times.
And I will say, Patricia Arquette, I
did she win the Oscar for this? I think she did.
She did.
I disliked her greatly in this film.
Totally
but there were scenes like that, I feel like, where she wasn't 100% like part of the experimental gimmick, where I was like, oh no, I get it. Like, I see it.
Yeah.
Sorry, because we do have to move. I do want to say this from a side note. We were talking about this before this podcast started. I keep saying, experimental gimmick, and that's the whole point of the thing. From a production management standpoint, Dan, you've worked in PM before. This must, just from outside that world, it is a fucking miracle that this thing came to fruition. Like, how do you, like...
it was hard to watch this and not think about that the first time. Yeah. Checking in with these same actors, all the actors being available, the locations, the crew, so I try to read up a little bit about how they did it. A couple months of pre-production, a month of post every year. He would write every year, kind of like leading up to it. It is... If you separate everything else, that is so impressive to me, because you that consistency. Also, I think it was like produced by IFC.
A single funder for the entire run. Yeah, which is kind of amazing.
And again, just a quick, Googling around for some tidbits of information beforehand. They really didn't check in on the footage throughout the process.
Oh, really? So they just watched it when it was done
at the end.
Oh, wow.
Which I think is also kind of a great leap of faith. And I think that this sort of production and this sort of Gim experiment.
We're going to keep shortening it.
This is something that I think for that alone, I'm glad this was made and it got so much attention, because, I'd like to see more things that take chances like this and do things like this that, we don't get a lot of. If there was just a film about a kid growing up and you checked in with and you had to replace your actors, I feel like it would just kind of get lost in the morass. It'd be beautiful. All right, so I got to see Moonlight.
But the thing is that what's amazing about that is two things. One is he was making other films at the time.
Right.
Like he was making big movies at the time.
And all the actor, well, the adult
You know
actors
what's
were.
hilarious? I keep thinking about this. Do you remember? Probably not, but the movie Daylight. Ethan Hawke was in. It was a vampire movie.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't mind it. It's funny. It's quirky. I keep thinking. I was like,
the Spirit Brothers made that. Yeah.
Between like scenes in Boyhood, Ethan Hawke's going and making fucking Daylight, and I'm just like, for all
But he's
the
also
actors,
making Before Sunrise, Before Sunset.
I understand that. Like, but it's just so funny to me.
Yeah, like Patricia Arquette was in Medium the whole time.
Yeah.
That's right.
That she was in this.
Which is a show that I did watch. So maybe that's why I love Patricia Arquette.
So the two
I like
things was
Medium,
it was
so I don't know.
amazing to me, and to me actually as a filmmaker, this actually sounds like a dream. Like
The freedom.
Just coming back.
No, yeah,
Coming back home?
every year, basically just getting a month to like look at something that you made the year before, and then write something new for it. Grabbing because I think it was only like 4 production days every year or something like that.
They shot the whole thing over 45 days. So what is that? With 12 years, roughly.
Yeah, 4 days or something, 3 to 4 days
3 or 4
every
days.
time. So it's kind of like the idea of just like dropping in with this family of actors that I work with all the time
That's right.
and writing a scene for
Seems super fun.
Right.
just,
he did have the actors inform where their characters were going, right?
Yeah.
So they all kind of weighed in on what they thought. So like Patricia Arquette's mother did what she did. She went back to school and became a psychotherapist or something. Ethan Hawke's dad was in insurance. So like those things kind of were very personal to them. And I
Yeah.
think that sort of helps speak to, I guess, is this movie a lot of navel gazing? I think that's something we should get to. Is it like,
what's
this is
that?
like
What's navel
masturbatory,
gazing?
like,
staring inward, being up your own ass.
is it,
Loving the smell of your own farts. That's a phrase I've coined.
yeah,
that
like,
I
is this kind
don't
of
use enough.
masturbatory,
Yeah.
experiment? Like, is this just, I wanted to do this. I wanted to play with Ethan
well,
Hawke
the
for 12
reason-
years.
It could be masturbatory, but masturbating feels great. So you can just do it.
I think the thing is that there's a lack of pretension when it comes to the scene. Like, I don't think the film is pretentious at all. Like, I think
I do.
well, I don't think it is. I think it is very sincere. It is very
agree.
warm-hearted, and I think they are, like, you can see it in the last scenes as well. They are striving to find meaning in all, especially the later half of the film where Patricia Arquette is talking about like where the fact that her life is kind of
What
like
is my
part-
life?
I thought there'd be more than this.
Yeah, and also like the absolute final scene, which was like seize the day versus the moment is happening with us all around. I think that's kind of to me that is close to like something that Richard Linklater has been working around his whole life. I think it's in the Before trilogy. I think it's in Waking Life. I think it's in Slacker.
It's weirdly in Dazed and Confused,
It's
which is
in
just a
Dazed-
snapshot of,
Yeah,
of the
Dazed,
day.
what's the line in Dazed and Confused is like, I hope we don't think about this being the greatest years of our lives, and I think that is true for everything here. So I don't think I admire the effort that's gone into it. I do think for a filmmaker that's so talented and such a great writer, but like I've seen him flop before. I think Fast Food Nation is a film that doesn't quite work. And, I've seen, I think the film Bernie is a film that doesn't quite work. But then at the same time, a film like School of Rock is a film that really works. It's really, for a film that's such a jokey comedy, it's such a warm-hearted film. And I
Sure.
think he's a warm-hearted filmmaker.
Oh, I do too. And maybe I'm sort of misspeaking when you said you felt it wasn't what was
pretentious.
pretentious. I don't think the content in the film is pretentious.
Mhm.
I think again, the experimental gimmick in itself is a bit pretentious. Not that people shouldn't do sometimes pretentious shit makes the coolest stuff. And then it just sucks when the person like sort of leans into it. And I don't think he's done that. That's something else I'll say about Boyhood. It's not been like a calling card really for him. Like
Richard Linklater's been around for
that's
long
what I'm
enough
saying.
to, like,
No, exactly. That's what
he
I'm
doesn't
saying.
need a calling
Of
guy.
course. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like it's a moment in time and it's a thing he worked on. And again, for as much as I don't like it, I'm glad he did it.
Mhm.
But I don't see the sort of like even like the warmth of the heart of the sort of what they're seeing, like you say, in like School of Rock and like those other things in this movie particularly, which is why, and I think it's because I feel like Mason is an empty vessel throughout that we're reminded through nostalgia of things that happen and we relate inwardly to, oh, I remember when I did something very similar to that. And that's where the emotions come from. It's a weird, it's almost like, and I've mentioned this, I had to come up with a term for this, or maybe there is one if you guys know it. It's when something happens in a film, and Boyhood's less overt than these examples that I will give. But in Star Trek Into Darkness, the second Star Trek movie,
Nope.
it's okay. But the reveal is that what's his name? Doctor Strange. Why am I blanking on this?
Idris Elba.
Cumberbatch, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we all sucked there for a second.
Sorry. Did you?
Two, Into Darkness, the second one.
Star Trek.
Yeah.
Khan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was Khan.
Right.
Now, everyone denied he was Khan, and then there's this big moment where he's like, my real name is Khan, or whatever the fuck it is, and it's that moment where characters in this universe shouldn't matter. Like, great, you have a different name, who gives a shit? And that's supposed to be a outside of the movie moment where the audience is supposed to go, whoa, but has nothing to do with the plot.
Okay.
Much like the end of Fantastic Beasts.
Fantastic Beasts, exactly.
I'm waiting
but that
for you
apparently
to-
does. We actually got a letter in last episode where the Grindelwald storyline for that.
Grindelwald, by the way.
Grindelwald?
I've heard this butchered so many
Grindelnuts?
times.
Grindelwald?
Beowulf.
No, but wait, I'm waiting for you to connect this.
I'm going to, but let me
Sorry.
now.
Go
So
on.
Yeah.
So, all of these things. While that's a specific moment, the Star Trek moment is a specific example of a film using outside information to make the audience feel something important outside of the story. I do feel like because this is such a generalized film and characters aren't quite developed, these constant pushes of where we are in time, these experiences that most likely we've all sort of had, it's the same type of weird, and all film is emotional manipulation. This is just a style that I don't respect as much as good storytelling. All of these things in Boyhood are there to make you feel like, oh man, I do remember that, and that felt like this. It's not the image that's making you feel it. It's your own specific, very similar moment that gives you the emotion.
Dan, do you want to speak to this, or do you
All
want me
I'll
to?
say is I think that was enough for me.
Right.
Okay,
Which is weird.
That's fine.
I think that's what I'm arriving at. Is like, why did I like this so much?
That's
and I
good.
think that was enough for me.
Okay.
For
Like
me,
enough to put myself in those shoes. Those times when you're like, yeah, all those things resonated enough that I don't even look at it as nostalgia as much as just that emotional, like those checkpoints along the way. I mean, I didn't have an alcoholic stepfather, all those things, but like there was enough there that I was in it.
Yeah.
I mean, are you speaking specifically to like things like the Harry Potter, getting the books for the Harry Potter, like when we see in the film they're receiving, they go to line up to get the Half-Blood Prince books, or when we see the Apple Mac IIe, or when we see the iPod.
There's different,
Yeah,
and
you
it's funny
talking
because
about those
I have a list of the ones, and I'm not going to read them because there's just too many. But I wrote.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes and no, because there's things in this movie that I feel like work in the way that they're using them to manipulate and understand the time period. For instance, the scoring, the songs they use to score, they're all from the time period. That's
right.
great. That's an outside thing.
I actually really, when the movie opened with Coldplay,
I know, I hated that. I hated that, but that's just
we
'cause I
should talk about that. We should talk about that.
because I don't like Coldplay, and that's what. But
no, but it's such a generic
Yes.
kind of.
and he's actually looking at the sky when it's look at the star. I'm like, oh, we're going straight fucking okay. But no,
That's that problem of not having subtext in the
yes,
scene.
Yeah.
But this is my thing. So like stuff where it hangs on things like there's a Game Boy SP, and now there's the silly bowling graphics that we all know, and now there's that 20 questions game he's playing with, and now like there's like some of the more pop culture things you can kind of get away with, but the Harry Potter themed book release for the Half-Blood Prince, I was like, why? Because that was a moment in
But that was what I mean of that kid's life. And again, this is like looking at it as just that. This is what this movie is this boy's life. That is what his life was.
But why is that important to his story? What did that do?
But that's the thing. I think the story is
His
what
boy's
was
life.
this boy's life along that. Like, if you had a Game Boy during that period, that was your fucking life.
I understand that,
if
but
you
that-
played Halo, like that was your life.
That's not interesting to me. That's just literally
But it's not like he doesn't linger on it for that long.
no, but
Like,
there's a whole
you
that
get it
scene's
as
like
a
3
mile
minutes
marker.
long of them going to this fucking thing, and it's like I was waiting for something to happen in that scene, and nothing does.
Yeah, I think you're coming at it as like somebody who watches movies that have.
But there's
more
no
of a
point
plot.
to that. Whereas I feel like there were other things, like in the bowling alley. In the bowling alley, like there were things that were like sparks back to like, oh, this is what bowling alleys feel like, and even the bowling alleys changed because time changes as they sort of. That was the dad's spot with all the kids. There was enough like little hints, like, oh, that's what the bowling alleys were like in 2000s or whatever the fuck it is. That's fine, but to dedicate a whole scene to just being like, oh, and remember when this book came out? You remember? You remember? I keep saying member because there's a whole thing on Star Trek or
But, no,
on
but
South
see,
Park.
I am actually on with Dan on this one, which is that I actually think that stuff is like the things that are more. The problem is I think the narrative stuff is less interesting than the actual time capsule thing, and I think the way to think about
experimental gimmick.
The way to think about this film is a sort of hybrid documentary, which is that it is a narrative documentary in some ways. And I think the time capsule stuff, it is like, to think about it this way, it is very savvy to have picked the Apple IIe as like an icon for that year. It is very savvy to like have picked Half-Blood Prince.
Well, remember again, they didn't pick it in hindsight. They picked it that year
at the time.
because it is what it was. Yeah.
And I think that stuff, and
it's not what they used though; it's how they used it.
And I think the scenes of like seeing Mason going to like pick up a copy of the Half-Blood Prince and lining up and stuff is a real testament to that boy's life. And I think it is interesting. And I think it does play into like this tragedy that happens slightly later of this boy who, because there's a point later on where he asks, "There's no real magic in life, is there?" Mm-hmm. Like he's sitting on the couch, and I think there are interesting connections like that happen, and I do like the sort of time capsule feel of the film. My issue has to be, and I think for you, Dan, you're saying that is enough of a of a thing to watch this, of a lens to watch this movie through. Mm-hmm. For me, the problem happens when we move away from that stuff and it becomes kind of more what is happening with the family at this point.
The moment with the magic talk with them talking while he's sleeping over at Dad's apartment, I think is super powerful. And the thing that Ethan Hawke says about like, well, whales are kind of magical. These things that sing and like can talk to each other under the water and like all this crazy stuff.
And
like,
that's based on a kid who grew up reading the Harry Potter series.
I get that, but that doesn't. The Harry Potter, the 2 or 3 minute scene of him getting the books and before that, then going to Dad's thing, does not make for me or any more scene more powerful.
Here's what I thought it was for.
Okay.
This is just I'm coming up with this on the spot.
Good. No, that's all I do.
You've got these. I mean, again, it's she's reading. I think it was Prisoner of Azkaban at one point in an earlier scene. Then you have that book release party where he dresses up.
Yep.
He's participating. Mm. He's putting on a costume with his sister and the two step siblings. Like he's like a joiner. He's in on this pop culture thing. And then as he goes along, he drifts away from these things. He doesn't participate. He observes. He doesn't buy into the pop culture stuff. He likes music that's on the fringe. He doesn't like things that are mainstream. And I kind of see that sort of devolve as it goes along. So I think for that alone, he's like, this is our family unit. We're going as a family, the 4 step siblings. And then as that all breaks apart, he kind of isn't tethered to that sort of
but isn't that
thing.
Sort of like and that's all very true. Like it's 100% what you described.
I don't even know.
But like, isn't that just sort of a generic kid growing up anyway? You're going to be into all the shit
that's what the movie is.
But that's not good. That's not good for me. Don't keep showing me just generic shit.
What's funny is that I think it is a movie worth watching every now and again, even if so what happened with me, and we'll get personal about it because
let's get personal.
It's a personal.
And just side note before we do, I think we're not going to get to. I had the whole written down thing. We're just going to keep talking about the movie as a whole. So I mean, I'm sure audience
don't break
you've seen
the
it.
Structure.
Nah,
no. Well, you don't have to. I mean, this movie is long, and to go through it chronologically.
And I think at this point, hopefully, people have seen it, and to go through it. Basically, like the general structure is. Boy is living with a single mom who goes through a series of abusive husbands before she finally kind of settles on her own. Boy finds himself more as he gets older and maintains a relationship with his estranged father.
Who gets less estranged as time goes on.
Who gets less estranged as time goes on. And the film is about the passage of time that happens to these characters. We see them go off to college. We see the father become an insurance agent, abandoning his rock star dreams, kind of musician dreams. So when I watched this last night, and I've had a kid recently, and the thing that I had a moment with my son right before I watched this movie, which was that
you were listening to Coldplay.
No, I was just putting him to sleep, and
you were singing Coldplay?
I was singing Coldplay to put him to sleep, and we were all yellow. No, but I was just having a moment with my son because like my wife went out to a movie last night, so it was just me and my son, and like one of the things that me and my wife joke about is that he never cuddles me. He just kind of like. I hold him up and he just kind of like uses me to get to places.
You're a tool.
And so last night I was putting him to sleep, and for the first time ever, out of nowhere, he just like lays his head down on my chest and just like relaxes. And it's like, and he's never done that. He's almost a year old, and he's never ever done that. And so, and we just had this moment where I was just staring at him for like 20 minutes before, as he drifted off to sleep, and he was staring at me, and we just kind of sat there. And the thing that I thought about a lot as I was watching Boyhood was this idea, and you know, it's a point to what you're talking about with the Half-Blood Prince, is that my son is going to go through. He's going to at some point he's going to be attached to me. At some point he's not going to be attached to me. At some point he's going to grow into things that I don't like. He's going to become a kid who might be, you know, like I'm not a sport.
He'll be in unsafe situations and you won't be able to be there for him.
Yeah. And so I was thinking, as I was watching the film, I was thinking about that. And the scene that actually really hit me this time around was Mason driving off to college at the end of the film. Mm-hmm. It's accompanied by the trailer song Hero by Family of the Year. And the thing that I was thinking about was that when I watched this movie for the first time, when I saw that scene, I remembered me taking long drives, like, you know, if I was going to another city or something like that, and listening to music and kind of like having moments by myself. And then I suddenly realized that my son is going to have moments by himself as he gets older. And I was like, I was suddenly struck by the idea that my son is not attached to me. He is his own person. He is an entity unto himself, and he is going to be his own person. And I think what struck me this time around watching the movie was this idea of this boy growing into this person. You
got brain primed.
Yeah, I still have issues with the film. I still think the alcoholic father scene doesn't work. I still think the Mexican laborer thing really doesn't work. I still think the darkroom talk doesn't work. I still think the second abusive, he's not abusive, but the second alcoholic father thing doesn't work. I think the relationship that Mason has, his girlfriend, it feels super uninteresting and generic to me. But I think there's a time capsule element to this film that can't be denied. And I think people who talked about this film as the profoundly moving story may have been attaching to that.
They were putting themselves in. They were putting something on it, for sure.
That's my point, is that, and again, you can do this many different ways. All film is emotional manipulation. The director or the entire production is a puppet master, and it's making you dance. And if it's doing its job, it's controlling you exactly how it wants. I see how this movie does that, and I think because of the experimental gimmick, it doesn't have... It can't get those claws in me. I would much rather it did and be enthralled with this story, but I can't get around that because of how that experimental gimmick lessens sort of other aspects of filmmaking in it. Now, again, going back to sort of the reason I'm more impressed when a film that is outside of my own experiences and things that are very similar to me gets an emotional reaction from me. Because that's like, I am now becoming a part of this entirely different character, whether that's set in real life, sort of like Moonlight was, or even a fantasy. The new Guardians trailer just dropped, so like Guardians of the Galaxy. But
like, would come back to Marvel.
I always do. But my point is, I'm way more impressed when something so fantastical can actually dig its claws in me and get an emotional response. And I've wanted to do an episode about this for a while. There's a video game called Overwatch that doesn't have a lot of story in the game, but there's these cinematics, these Pixar quality cinematics that they do, that literally these characters, like in 5-minute chunks, like really fucking mean something to me. Like I actually get that weird swell of emotion in different parts of it. So when things like that can get things so far away from reality, when then I'm just given a reality that I've already not already experienced, but experienced very similar things and like whatever and other sort of problems, that doesn't feel like a strong experience to me. And I understand it can to other people. It's just how I like my stories, I guess. Mm-hmm.
I was gonna to that point, and this comes back to a production management issue as well. Is like, so for example, Tree of Life is a film I don't think actually fully works, but it has some really the scenes of childhood, I think, are some of the most powerful things Terrence Malick has ever directed.
Agreed.
And the thing is that film has this sort of dreamy, layered, for lack of a better word, Malickian style. And the thing about that I admire, and I have to think about if I was going to be making Boyhood, is that they had to set the tone for the film from frame one. And to inject, like if he jumped and in year 5 and started doing a Waking Life kind of animated conception of what's going on in Mason's head, it would break the film. If he jumped and did something that was like Terrence Malick, which is something that I personally respond to, in year 12, it would not work.
Of course, it would break the film in chronology. Of course. But the style he chose is total baseline.
No, but I think that's also Linklater as a filmmaker. Like if you see it in Slacker, his first movie, is a filmmaker who's not as interested in aesthetics as he is interested in the philosophy of aesthetics.
Which is totally fine, but I never look, aesthetics come and go. I'm a character guy. Like, I need fucking characters to engage with me and for me to jump along on their emotional journey. And the only one in this film that almost did it, even though I have less in common with her, is the daughter, is Samantha. Mason surely didn't. Mason reminded me, and tell me if you think this is fair or not.
Right.
Especially as he got older, reminded me of the worst part of the worst parts of myself when I was younger. This sort of like, I got everything figured out and like everything's bullshit and I'm just gonna work on my fucking like, and you look back at there's a sort of beauty to those moments, but also you're looking at this kid and you're like, fuck, I used to be like that. Like, ugh.
I don't think he comes across as having as having it all figured out. I think that
he's in the car with his girlfriend. And he's fucking talking about how like everything's rigged and all the shit and like.
But then you have them sitting on the curb when she's broken up with him or she's cheated on him,
and he's still like, whatever.
Right, and then she goes, something comes up, and he's like, he says, well, I've been sleeping with other girls, and she goes, who? And he's like, well, I don't have to tell you. And she's like, why'd you bring it up? And you can see him. Like this facade of this kid that's trying to act like he's got everything together. You see that he doesn't, and I didn't see that he had it. All like the whole time I felt like he was floundering. I felt like he was struggling to figure out what he's supposed to be doing, and that. So yeah, I mean, I could see.
That was what I was saying.
To Matt's point, he does remind me of every first year university student. Yes. Like every first year college student.
And we were all that kid.
But also, the thing that I think is tricky about that is that if you do first year college conversations as an adult, they are bullshit because you've got these like entitled, privileged kids talking about the world as though they know and they understand it. What's cool about and why I was surprised that the film doesn't work that well for me, and it might have to do with writing, time, production, whatever, is that before sunrise, the first was it before sunset is the first one. That's basically what it is. It's two college aged people having those long philosophical discussions that we all had if you went to college.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And the kinds of conversations that you have when you're 20 years old.
Right.
And that's what that is. And what's surprising about Before Sun...
The first one.
Yeah, the first one. Is that it's really engaging and it feels authentic. It feels like when I was that age. And I watched it this year.
Sure.
It feels like when I was that age having that conversation. The problem with the conversations that happen in Boyhood is they feel like me watching myself having those conversations where you're just like, ooh, kid, come on. You know, like,
and beyond those conversations, the writing,
I think it embraces that.
The scene with the kids when they're like, in the abandoned house and they're waiting and like, we're getting some hose overlaid, like that whole fucking garbage. I was like, that they were all talking like caricatures of those type of kids. Now we had sort of similar situations, or I did at least growing up, but like, it was never for a film that's so concerned about making it feel like, this is, everything's a template in this film. So like, it's these scenes where like, there's supposed to be some sort of profound, like this is something that boys can go through as they grow up. What takes away from them is the garbage writing. It feels like just like a generic, like, oh, kids talk like this. Let's throw all these buzzwords in. Let's go. Like those moments that should feel powerful.
Did it not feel powerful to you because it was
they didn't feel real? It felt like a play.
Oh man, that's so funny because that scene especially I remembered before the second viewing, and I was like, I remember being in those situations where you're like, the emotion genuine to me.
The emotion that it's trying to invoke and that it does invoke for the character in the film did not invoke in me because I could not get around how fucking awful all of these characters sounded. Not the
because
quality.
You thought the dialogue was written.
Was rough. And another thing, and sort of just we keep talking about Ernesto.
The Mexican gardener?
Yes.
Mexican laborer.
He was working on a pipe in the yard. Yeah. And then there's a throwaway line from the mom saying, hey, you're a smart kid. You should go to school. Even though he's done nothing that's really super smart there. He's like, you probably should do this pipe. Great. And then a year or so or however many years later, you have this moment of him being a manager at a thing at a restaurant who they're all eating at, who also is going to school and doing all this other great stuff. And he's like, you really changed my life that day. Listen to your mom. She's a smart lady. And now I get what they're trying to do.
Small victory.
You're trying to give the mom almost a bit of purpose throughout the thing because up until this point, she's kind of been a little bit victim-y in a weird. She's done some strong stuff too.
Sure.
But the way, and the whole Ernesto thing is really what I think the pinnacle of what bothers me in this movie is that it's
not a high point for the movie.
It feels like
I'll agree there.
It feels like back in the day it wanted to get a point across, and then because of the way the production is, they're like, oh fuck, we didn't do that yet. So then they do it, and it just feels so fucking. This is the worst example of how things in this movie can feel forced. And if we're talking about things that break immersion for me, Ernesto,
I will definitely
number
give you
one,
100%. I'll give you that. I do think that it didn't need to exist. I understand why they gave her this small victory because, I mean, she was a college professor. She was, we're to assume, changing students' lives. I mean, she seemed like a cool teacher that, that I had that helped me along the way.
There's a more powerful moment with the girl in the room.
I didn't need her to have that small victory because if I'm watching this film through Mason's eyes, my mom doesn't get a small victory. You know what I mean? Like I don't. Yeah. Her crying at the end that what else is my life about is enough of what I think he was processing.
Yeah.
So to give that moment, it was unnecessary, but
it's but I can the other thing is coming back from a production management point of view. If we were to try and find a positive of that is like they set that moment up in year.
They did.
I think that the actual gap between that and the delivery year is like 3 or 4 years.
They said, that was from the, I think the 2010 scene, and then that pays off in 2013. So
it's like 3 years. So it's like just think about I agree. It's not it is one of the things that you could point to as this film not working is a scene like that. But I do admire this idea of like, hey, we're going to set up the scene now, and we'll pay it off in a few years' time.
But they totally they flop the payoff. Like they don't stick the landing at all.
No, it doesn't work. And but you got to remember the making this film is a game of chess like that. Where you're trying to think 3 moves ahead. Right?
Yes. Is it impressive that they thought 3 moves ahead and they could get the same people and do all this stuff? 100%.
But that's not enough for you.
That's not enough for me. A good movie does that not make.
And unfortunately, Dan, I'm on Matt's side.
No, I get that.
You've been pretty even back and forth. I have to say.
I'm a chameleon on no, because watching it this time around, I did kind of admire it more. And here's the thing: the first time I watched it, I thought it was very rough. Like I was in a movie theater, I was excited to see this movie. This idea of a 12-year movie, it looks exactly like the kind of genre of movie that I'm into, and I thought it was pretty rough.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a clunker, and it came out like in this sort of fanfare of like this amazing, cinematic triumph. And I just didn't think it was that. This time around, I have to admit, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Like watching it a second time around, Mason wasn't, Ella Coltrane wasn't as annoying 18-year-old as I thought he was.
If he said sorry one more fucking time, I was just like, how? That's literally must be I bet you if you search in the script, it's like 80% of what that fucking kid says.
After watching it, I was like, they got lucky with this kid. Did you not think that? Did you think that
it could have gone.
I mean, it could have gotten worse, but I think that he was rough when he was older.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and it's also hard to not think about what these kids were going through. Like when the daughter is singing Britney, she wakes him up with a pillow and she's singing Britney Spears.
Yep.
You could not have gotten the 14-year-old to do that, right?
No.
Like, the actors changed along the way.
And I think they were specifically looking for a kid who didn't feel like
felt
Haley
like a
Joel
vessel.
Osment.
He felt like a vessel for you to put your experience on,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And so in that sense, I think it was successful because I think that's what the purpose was.
Yeah, if you'd gotten like a Haley Joel Osment or something,
you would have been.
So would you say that
a kid that would have come in the later years have been like, I've honed my craft, now I need, I'm not but would have been a problem.
So would you say in general that this film is the equivalent? Because I might have just come up with a decent analogy, or it could be horrible.
I'm gonna say no first.
I know. Is the equivalent?
That's a good tactic to take.
Is the equivalent of a beautifully constructed, like let's say a crystal vase, right? That it is ready to have you put whatever meaningful, beautiful things inside of it when you have it, when you get it, and when you use it. But if you take away
this is a complicated analogy.
all of your your sort of experience that it is now trying to tap into you,
Wait,
is it just an empty vase?
Does this
A
crystal
beautiful
vase
vase.
have personality? Is this?
It doesn't. It's a crystal.
I mean,
it's clear. It's whatever you put in it.
Yes, but crystal can be beautiful.
Yes.
You know, I think there's
And the
enough
structure
value in the
and
in the
how they did it.
vase itself.
How they did it with the experimental gimmick, I think, is beautiful. I think the craft and the dedication is a beautiful thing. I don't think anything else about it is. You wouldn't bring the crystal vase over to someone's
So what
house
do
and
you
be
think-
like,
okay, so when you all these critics, the Rotten Tomatoes score, you know, all these things, what do you think aside? So do you think that there's another view aside from, maybe I'm looking for backup, aside from my own, that's like, you know, I put my experience on it, I thought that the production value, what do you think resonated so much with critics?
two things.
Yeah, please.
One,
I should be able to
think
present this, but I'm not. I didn't read enough reviews.
the first being, I think your point of view is, or the point of view you've been sort of putting forward, and the one that I've been saying I can't get behind, in a way, and no, not even in a way, is a detriment to me because I can't get.
You're so cold.
I can't get behind. Yeah,
Didn't
I
say.
can't get behind that type of storytelling that's so self-reliant on things outside of the film itself being my own personal experiences. Normally, that's supposed to like be like the spice on a story. This is just like if you're eating a spoonful of pepper. Like the other side of it is, and this is a weird thing to say. This is a very let me say this. I don't think for either. I think you've both made incredible points that make me think about it more. So this is sort of my teeing this up is I do think this is a very easy film to bandwagon for.
Yes, I can.
I think it's much easier to go along and say, this is amazing. It was shot over 12 years and we experienced this boy's life. It's beautiful. Like, I think that's 100%. Now, Dan, you've fucking labeled a ton of shit that's like very true. Shahir, you've even, and I'm not just doing this for effect. Like my thing about
what he usually does.
I do,
mean.
but like normally I've been saying gimmick, and now sort of for me saying experimental gimmick is a large consent to how I actually viewed this movie.
You always saw the value, I think, in the
Right. So
experiment.
like, I just think it's a super easy thing to champion in a weird way.
Right. Why did people? I mean, look, it's Richard Linklater, who's a well-established filmmaker, who basically he dropped the project out of nowhere. You know, like I've been making this movie for 12 years. I've been following kids.
By the way,
Yeah, I've been growing with him over time. So I think it is easy to, you know, and I still think, you know, like there are problems to this movie, and I don't think it's as great as people make it out to be. But it is you know, like there's truth to this idea that it's a once in a lifetime film. You know, like it is literally once in a lifetime
That's
film.
right.
Oh no! What if someone does 13 years then?
But then, you know, you're like your empty vase analogy, and I was like, it made me think of, and this is going to be college age pretension coming out, and it was is the John Keats poem "Ode to a Grecian."
Yes!
You guys know this poem. It's like every college
vaguely,
every college kid gets
I'm
taught
Greek,
this.
by the way, so I'm so honored.
Well, there you go. Ode to a Grecian urn. The notion is that Keats was writing this poem about this beautiful urn and these two lovers trapped in time. And the final line of the poem is, "Beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know." And that's, I think, is kind of an analogy to your glass vase analogy,
But using it in a different way. Yeah.
and to Dan's point, which is that if you find this beautiful, that is all you need to know.
Right.
And there is beauty to be had in this film. And I think that is true. For me, as a narrative construction, I think I you know, like if it had been like a mediocre narrative construction, I think I would have been okay with that. But I think it's a pretty poor narrative construction at times. And like and it really does come right back to the alcoholic father at the beginning. Like I think that sequence of events is so poorly constructed, and that is such a big chunk of your gateway into this movie that you that you got to fight to get me back after that. And unfortunately, it's not just that scene. And the problem with that scene again is its lack of specificity. I don't see the detail and nuance, and there's a lack of subtext in the scenes. There are people just talking about what they want. They're not talking about who they are as human beings, or, you know, like in a subtextual way.
So what would you say? Is that almost your final thought, or what would you?
My final thought, I'm just going to borrow it from Keats, because my man John Keats said that.
Shit.
Beauty is truth, truth beauty.
Okay. I mean, we're gonna give Dan the final word, so I'll just go right now. Again, I think it's an experimental gimmick that sort of they lean on a little too much, or a lot too much. I think the writing and the storytelling is rough based on real life filmmaking problems that happen and can exist. I think I don't think personally for me the film's not worth my time, but apparently I am wrong I'm not part of the majority saying that the movie is wonderful.
Wait, what'd you say?
I think
it's on tape.
Yeah.
Did you say I am wrong?
It's reported.
I think if you're looking at statistics, statistically, I am wrong in saying this is a bad movie, but I still think it's a bad movie.
Right.
And I just, I do, however, appreciate the talks I've had about this movie here and elsewhere have always been very interesting to me. And I really liked sort of what Shahir said before he gave his final thought about taking the vase analogy and turning it with that beautiful poem into a thing. And have we just all become best friends? Is that what we just did? I think so.
We've all grown up.
Let's see how this goes.
Okay. Yeah. Oh wait. Yeah. Dan. Final. Oh yeah. By the way, if you haven't seen Boyhood, don't.
No, you can check it out on Netflix right now.
So that's my final thought. I think that on the strength of the experiment, the production value, I think there's a lot of gems of moments that will resonate with most people. I think the film is definitely worth a watch. I don't think it's the kind of movie where it's like you watch it and like, oh, it was terrible, don't go see that film. I think that there's enough here for you to watch and put your own spin on. So I would say go see it. And I expect that I'll be back once a year for the next 12 years to review another film.
That's right.
No, what we're going to do is we're going to review this film every year for the next 12 years.
You have to watch it again.
Oh, no. I actually had in my notes at like the 2 hour mark, like in all caps, because I was so angry. I was like, is this still going? How is this a thing?
There's a podcast where like some comedians review, what's that Adam Sandler movie where they go back to college, back to high school or something like
Billy
that?
Madison?
No. The one that he did recently.
Oh.
And there was Grown Ups, where they review Grown Ups 2, I think, every episode.
Oh my God.
And they try and watch it every day for a year or something like that. I think that's the general gist of it.
I mean,
it's not the only podcast. I mean, it's not really about a movie. It's about one movie. So we are the only podcast
about movies. Plural.
That's
anyway,
why I was here.
Yes. This has been the only podcast about Boyhood. So Dan, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. I felt like we assaulted you.
No, I feel okay.
Spoken. Oh man, I don't know how to take that. When not making us feel bad about attacking your opinions on a film, where can folks find you?
Nowhere. No, I'm on social media, but I'm
what are your
private
handles?
accounts.
What are your handles?
Dan Kuv, DANKUV.
Oh, these are private accounts?
I think I have one tweet that I've ever tweeted.
Okay, well, more importantly, there's something that you do that's absolutely amazing called you've dubbed it $5 Fridays.
Yeah,
Tell us a little bit about that, because listeners, this is a fucking phenomenal idea.
That's so sweet. Okay, so after the election, I was feeling pretty depressed.
Why?
We voted for Trump in this room
because he didn't win with enough of a victory.
Oh!
I don't know. No. So I wanted to do something small. I kind of needed to turn off the news for a while, and I wanted to do something small. So I came up with this idea for something called $5 Fridays. It is just I pick a donors choose project. All the donors choose projects are education based, obviously, and they're vetted. They're the organization pick. Teachers submit their projects. They say what they need: pencils, school books, new furniture for their classroom.
Stuff you just think they get and they never
Exactly.
do.
And I try to pick projects that had not been funded. They'd been posted for months and nobody gave $1. And then try to crowdsource or crowdfund micro donations. I posted on Facebook and I tried to get people to give $5 on a Friday.
Yeah.
How can people find this?
So funny you asked that. So far, it's just been I'll post it and then I ask my friends to just share it, and that's been funding. We've only been doing it for 4 weeks, and we've funded 4 projects, which is great.
Yeah.
But I am going to start. My husband's creating a logo right now to do like a Facebook group.
Great.
So we're gonna start the group online. So look for it soon. You can look for it on Facebook. It'd be $5 Fridays.
Yeah,
that's great.
And then you could join the group, and then every Friday you'll get the notification. And if it goes well, we can do when I look for these projects, there are so many teachers out there that need stuff,
and just like $200, $300, things that were actually, if everyone doing it gave $5, the price of a fucking coffee in New York City.
We can do more projects. We can do bigger projects, and so thanks for that, Kroll. Kroll's been a big supporter. Appreciate it.
That's fantastic.
It's super awesome.
I'm Dan Kuv on stuff, DANKUV, but I'm mostly private.
Doesn't matter, man.
Yeah.
Now you're public.
Oh, no.
Good for you.
Shahir, what about you, buddy?
You can find me at shahirdaud.com. That's shahirdaud.com, which has got links to Twitter, Facebook, all that bullshit, which you don't want to see. And I should go private like Dan. I think that's a wise move.
Bullshit. Come look at all my stuff. I'm on MatthewKroll.com. That's MatthewKroll. You can also see me on Instagram at Skeletor, the number 4 PREZ, or on Twitter at EmperorMSK. Also, check us out on our Facebook page for the only podcast about movies. You can reach us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com and onlymoviepod on Twitter. And iTunes reviews would be so lovely.
Kartik, we hope you enjoyed this.
Kartik, please leave us a review.
I want to know what Kartik thought.
Kartik and I have briefly spoken about it, but first of all, he couldn't believe you hated Drive so much.
No one ever believes I hate Drive so much, but the hype is real.
And I think he's actually not a fan of this movie, of Boyhood either. So he wanted, but the thing is, the critical consensus loves this movie, so he wanted to hear some consenting voices. Yeah. He thought we wouldn't like this movie.
I know, no, people set us up, or they think one of us will hate it, and so we yell at each other. We know this and we love it, so send in your requests still. Again, this has been the only podcast about movies. Dan, thank you so much. Guys, we'll see you next week. Oh, Star Wars! Star Wars! Star Wars Rogue One.
How many Star Wars, of our podcast, 80% is Star Wars.
Star Wars!
Nothing but Star Wars!